Johnny come lately, new kid in town.
Welcome back to the show, 3:06 in the afternoon, talking about new kids in town. Pauly, Suba, who do we have today?
We do have Alex Duenas. I do want to thank our sponsors, and that's MicroPack. Don't miss a memory. Get your travel cameras and storage essentials in MicroPack today. Subway, you got to refresh to be fresh. Triple J Ford. Get that free $500 gas card when you drive home with a new Ford truck. Visit triplejguam.com. Get pre-approved instantly. GTA, we start with you, and Chili's Grill and Bar at Chili's More Life. Great food and memories happen here. Another Beyond the Ballot. This time we hang out with Mr. Alex Duenas. And so just if we can get a little bit of information, your background about yourself, and where'd you grow up?
Sure, I'd love to. First of all, buenos and hafde Guam. My name is Alexander Duenas, number 10 on the Republican side of the ballot. And just to get to know me a little better, I was born and raised in Guam, and I'm 34 years old. I attended public schools my entire life, where I'm a graduate of George Washington High School, 2010, Go Geckos. And my family's from Minarahan. Afterwards, I attended the University of Guam, where I graduated with a double degree in accounting and economics. I have an MBA in healthcare administration, and I'm currently a PhD student in finance. When it comes to work experience, I've worked as a chief financial officer, an accounting manager, as well as a commercial banker. And that goes into my platform, which is economic development and improvement, as well as stronger fiscal governmental management. Those are my two things.
Let's talk about the economy then. Yeah.
Yes.
And so obviously we bring in 90% of our products, right? And so the tourism industry is our number one industry.
Yes.
And so are there ways to strengthen that? Are there ways to diversify even more so? What are your thoughts?
So, I love that question because I think it goes into two things in particular. So, first of all, when it comes to, before I go into what I believe will diversify, I'm just going to go and talk about something that I believe that kind of gets discussed a lot, which is agriculture.
Okay.
And agriculture is a very important staple. However, the thing is that with agriculture, at the end of the day, it's something that we're going to have to be able to provide, but there's several limitation factors, or at least concerns that I have. And first of all is, do we have enough land to be able to produce the amount of food that's going to be needed to sustain the island? Second of all, how about the type of foods that we're going to be producing? We are in a tropical climate, so there's only so many types of food that we can actually produce. It also, one thing that's talked about, farming, that's very expensive in general and very risky. You're subject to seasonality. You don't know if things are going to fall apart, and it's just a very cost-intensive thing in the beginning. So those are just some of my concerns that I have when it comes to the agriculture component. Now, when it comes to the diversification, one thing that I'm very, very passionate about is actually call centers. And I know it sounds like, where's that coming from? Well, there's several things about it that makes it great. Is that, first of all, we have the existing infrastructure in place. We have our population, which speaks in radio English, for lack of a better word. So it's very accentless when compared to the United States. Second of all, a lot of these jobs are very entry level. So there's a lot of opportunities to be able to go and get fed into it.
Okay.
And third, I think it feeds into the national narrative so much better that, products are being made in America. There's a push to purchase products in America. So why can't services also be purchased in America? We have human resources because we're an island. There's only so much that we can export to make a big difference. But our people are our strongest resource. That's where we're going to be able to see the big movements, the movements that are going to be building into the 2030s, the 2040s, whatever it may be. We always look at examples such as Singapore. Singapore is often used as the golden standard of what an island economy can be. However, Singapore was not by accident.
Right.
It's a part of a set of...
They were forced out of their own country, right?
They were.
Malaysia.
They were.
Yeah.
And they were they built this infrastructure in place. They were called an economic miracle, the Asian tigers.
Right.
So these things did not happen by accident. Great things do not happen by accident. It takes careful planning and meticulous execution to be able to bring these things into life. And I believe we can bring these things into life.
Very cool. I really appreciate that. I don't want to get into the weeds of call centers, but how do we compete with all of these international call centers that have cheaper pay? Like they don't pay, they don't need to to pay as much, and they're not held to the same kind of federal regulations that we are as Americans.
So, that's the thing, is that this is where a lot of it has to come down to the cell.
Okay.
And, I mean, at the end of the day, Guam's labor, at least our wages, compared to somewhere like, say, California, is a lot lower, but we're still made in the United States.
Right.
And we still have the infrastructure within the United States. And when I'm talking about a call center sector or industry, I'm not talking about one or two businesses. That's not going to move the needle. If we're
Okay.
looking to actually grow something, we got to grow it as an industry. That's what's going to make things matter.
Okay.
If we're looking at making things like something that we could say that we built over for 20, 30 years, that's what's going to augment us. And we got to look at other things too, such
Sure.
as, tourism is our main pillar. I still think it's something that needs to get back on its footing, and I think it's something that we can get back on its footing. But, we just really need to put the pedal to the metal, and we got to be able to really focus in on what we're looking for. The way I look at the tourism in general, I'm sorry to go on
No,
about
go
this a
for
little
it.
bit,
Go for it.
is that, when it comes to tourism, we've had a once in a 100-year event happen, which is COVID.
Yeah.
It was cataclysmic. It caused a lot of global shocks. And I want to be very clear that I'm not advocating for anybody to be, released or let go from top to bottom, nothing like that. But what I am advocating for is expert help. I believe if we have expert help, whether it be in the form of a consultant or whether it be a firm or whether it be several firms, that's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength that we say, hey, we have this problem. We want to get things back on track. So we're going to reach out to get these resources for something that happened once every 100 years. So I don't think that that's much of a crazy idea at all. I think it's something that can be definitely implemented, and I think it's something that can help the island out a lot.
And when you think about that, is that like a firm that's going to hang around for a bit to assist, or is it a study?
So the thing is that when it can be both.
Okay.
It could be an initial study so we could get our footing, a baseline understanding of what's going on, and
Okay.
then when you have a firm come in, we don't want consulting engagements to last
Right.
forever.
Because it almost sounds like federal receivership.
Not necessarily. I just
Okay.
think that it's something that we are able to go and put in extra brain capital to be able to handle this event that just happens once every 100 years or something
Yeah.
that we are within the systems that we had with tourism, it was working well. When we had the existing infrastructure,
Right.
but you had this shock, like I was saying, that just came in out of
That's
nowhere. It caused massive global
Right.
disruptions. So I think that when we're dealing with an extraordinary circumstance, we have to use extraordinary measures. So that's why I would say that our people right now, we're great for the infrastructure that we have right now, but we just need that little extra juice to come in there and to be able to really get things going. And
I have to say, I'm very happy to see you back on the ballot. I saw you 4 years ago.
Thank you.
Not 2 years ago, though. And so, can I ask what brought you back to running again? What are your passions? What did you see in the current legislature, maybe, that you said, you know what, I need to put myself back in there?
So, I think that the thing is that with the legislature is a diverse or batch of voices.
Okay.
And I feel like with what I could bring to the table to not necessarily do better, but just to help with, is to give that financial perspective, to be able to have the ability to really deep dive into these numbers and not just take it at surface level stuff, but to really go and question, okay, so what is the composition of this? Is this, okay, 80%? What are the wants versus the nice to haves or the needs
Sure.
more so? Because in an era of competing resources, let's go say the budget, for example. The budget is our roadmap, and that's what's going to determine how we're spending for the rest of the year. However, we're only working within the confines of the budget. The way I look at it is like, let's go grow the revenue portion of our island.
Okay.
And then the budget will just, it's a dynamic thing that changes year over year over year. But as we're going further and further, we're going to have, and this is just me being a little doom and gloom, but this is just the fact of the matter, is that we're currently experiencing a construction boom. That construction boom there's a general consensus within the island that
Right.
this thing is going to be falling off in about 10 years. Where does that leave us right now? Right now, the way that I look at it, our tourism pillar, that's going to be the thing that's going to be able to help buoy us through, because if the construction boom were to end right now, what position will we be in? That would be my only question. I don't know if it's going to be something that's going to be reminiscent of 2019. I'm pretty sure it won't be. And that's why it's such, and you hear this in political talk a lot, but it's just I can't stress this enough. We are at a critical juncture right now. this is the time that we need to make the planning come into place, because come 10 years from now, Guam may not be a place that a lot of people want to live in, because it's going to be a very violent contraction. It's going to be rough. And that's the reason why we need to start now to be able to build for our future. That's why it's so important that we do it now.
I'm already hearing some of that rhetoric or that those kinds of statements from family members off island as to there's nothing for me to come home to.
Right.
And so I agree that we need to not only plan for those that have left to have something to come home to, but those that are here right now
Yes.
to have something worth staying.
Yes. And that's the thing, is that people are leaving. There's a whole host of reasons why people leave. But usually whenever people leave a certain place, throughout human history, it's always been to be able to seek better opportunities. You can look at it from the people from England who came over to America. They were looking for better opportunities. When William the Conqueror went from France he was looking for better opportunities. People leave because they're looking for better opportunities for their families, and they're right to do so, because, that's their obligation to their family. And that's the way I look at it within the island. I think that we can still do a lot of good stuff. I think that there's still things that we can absolutely put in there. Things are not broken, because when we say broken, it means that it's beyond working. I would look at it more like it's just, some things are sputtering here and there. There's some pistons that are not firing completely okay, but I think that this is something that we can absolutely get on track. I believe that we can do this, and I believe that we have a lot of good people who can do a lot of good things. And that's what I genuinely believe.
Yeah, because my concern is, and I don't know if we're there yet, but there's a few people that I know that have rented out their homes and
Yes.
have left the island,
Yes.
and they depend on that economy.
Yes.
However, that's also keeping the housing market at a pace where the people that do stay, my children, aren't going to be able to afford those homes.
Right. So when it comes to housing and things of like the housing issues, and this is something that I've had to talk about to myself a lot too, that in 2026, with the current circumstances, the difference between the Guamanian reality and the Guamanian dream are not really aligned very well. Is that, back in our grandparents' days, I remember that we had the extension. We had the 1-bedroom and the 2-bedroom house, and then the grandparents would build on that house as the money got a little better. Right now, I think the thing is with the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with the beautiful lawn and the fence, that's not really something that's very feasible right now in 2026, just because construction costs are going up. Costs are something that are always going to pretty much go up. They're never going to practically come down. So that's where it comes to, I think, is just the expectations, as well as being able to reallocate this stuff matters right now. And whether this is our reality in 2026, but in 2036, this may not be our reality at all.
Right.
And that's the reason why I say it's so important to start now with this
Right.
type of stuff, because we don't plant shade or trees for the shade for us to benefit from the shade. We do it for the kids to benefit
Right.
from the shade.
Yes.
So that's where the direction that I'm going in. I'm looking at more of 10 years from now,
Sure.
Guam. Is this going to be a place where people are going to say, I am here, I love to live here, this is my home?
Yeah.
Or is they're going to say, this is my home and I don't want to leave, but I have to leave because I just can't make it here?
Right. What are your thoughts on infrastructure, specifically the power grid going underground? We're hearing that it's close to $7 billion. The ratepayers, if we're going to pay for it, it's almost like the tree, right?
Yes.
You don't plant the tree for shade now, right? You plant the tree for shade later.
Yes.
And so if the ratepayers foot the bill now to pay for the whole island to go underground, I don't think I can afford. That might even make me leave the island. Right. So have you thought about that, and how do we plan for something that obviously does need to be underground when we're seeing more typhoons?
Absolutely. So, the thing is with the underground power, from what I understand, this can be conducted in phases. And it goes back to being able to afford what we can afford in 2026. We're in Typhoon Alley, so we get whacked by typhoons pretty frequently.
Right.
They're projecting that we're going to get whacked by typhoons more.
Right.
So this is kind of the period of time where we really have to look at it and say, okay, do we need to get this thing underground? I think everybody can agree that we need to get this underground. Now, how do we move that forward? How do we get that going? And it's not so much about even saying how do we get that going? Let's start getting it going. If we can partition it out in phases, like the way that I understand it to be, then it's going to be 7 billion over what though? 20 years, over 15 years. Well, 20 years was 20 years ago, and how is it going to be 20 years from now? I
Right.
mean, are we going to still be here 20 years from now, looking at it, saying, hey, well, we didn't move on it at all, or can we say, hey, you know what, we got about 30-40% of the island done? We're working within our means, but I think that it's important to get started. And at least have a cost estimate on it, and what these specific
Sure,
phases
yeah.
will cost.
Yeah. Hey, you talked about fiscal responsibility, right?
Yes.
Within the government,
Yes.
I assume, right?
Yes.
And so, what agency would you like to have oversight over if you have the opportunity to do so?
If I am lucky enough to have the opportunity to have oversight, I would like to go and look at more specifically GITA. I'd like to look at, DOA. I would like to be basically Ways and Means. That's the area I'm
Okay.
looking at, because I think that those are the levers that are going to be ultimately in control of being able to say, hey, okay, so these are our money-making centers, whether it be revenue generating
Sure.
or whether it be collections. It's like these are the centers that are ultimately going to have the inflows and the outflows of the government of Guam.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important to be able to have oversight over. That's something I'm very interested in, and it's
Yeah.
something that I want to do.
No, I really appreciate that too, right? Because a lot of the stuff can go over the head. It goes over my head a lot when they're talking about, think of DRT as the cash register, revenue and taxation as the cash register for Guam. How do we make sure that we collect
Right.
all that is owed to us?
Right.
And there are opinions that we're not collecting all that we should, especially with federal contracts. There's some leakage.
Mm,
And then also the use tax, right?
Right.
And online tax.
right.
And what are your thoughts on that? Should we be finding ways to collect taxes for online purchases?
Well, I think that the thing is with the online purchases in particular, it kind of goes back to the cost of living, and this is where we really have to weigh out the cost benefit of it all. Is there revenue to be able to be collected on online sales? Yeah, there is. But when you have a high cost environment such as Guam, this is the only form of relief people have. This is the only form of relief people have. So, I mean,
You're going to upset quite a few families that can't purchase on Amazon at the prices that they're used to.
right. And that's the thing is that, could we go and say there's an opportunity to go and make that money? Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to make money, collect money, but it's also being able to keep the people in mind. And I think practically every single Guamanian shops online. And I think that that is one of the few forms of relief that they're able to get.
Yeah.
I know plenty of friends that purchase food online. And they're able to do it at cheaper prices, from what they're able to go and get over here. And it's not that they don't want to patronize local stores. It's just that at the end of the day, when you're trying to go and pay your power bill, or you're trying to go and decide whether you're paying your rent or your car,
Right.
every dollar matters.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can touch a little bit on some of the environmental factors, there was Jason, he's called twice already, and he's very interested. It's the first time he's going to vote.
Okay.
He's very interested on the candidates' thoughts on how do we protect the environment. He's concerned that not enough is being done. He's concerned about deep sea mining. He brought up the Tarzan poles, that there's one hiking trail that is being bulldozed and not being able to access to get to Tarzan Falls.
Mm.
And so, I mean, we can just touch generalizing on environmental protections.
Sure. So, with environmental protection, I feel like it's one of those things that people don't see the immediate effects of it up until the point where, we're at the point of no return, and you say, hey, well, this bird used to be around here and is no longer around here anymore. I think it's really goes back to the planning, and it really goes back to first of all, being aware of the issue, and then second of all, being able to take tangible steps to be able to preserve that. So what do I mean by that? I'm not an environmental expert, but the thing is that I think that anything that ever goes on requires planning, and it requires being able to critically analyze the trade-offs between these types of things. I mean, environmental protection is incredibly important, because that is basic. When we lose that, it's very hard to get it back, if we can even get it back. So that's why I think that the folks who I think know how to protect this stuff better than I do are going to be very critical in getting this done. But the perspective that I offer is that everything that's done, no matter which idea we're trying to push out there, it always revolves around the green stuff, and I'm not talking trees. It's like I'm
Yeah.
talking about money. So that's where I feel that I can act in an ancillary capacity to be able to help, be able to get some of these things going. That's
Right.
where I feel I can help with that.
I really appreciate you coming in too, because I've read a number of your op-eds, and I've always thought Alex is he looks at a problem and he knows how to analyze,
Thank
right? And so, is that something that you've always been able to look at an issue and analyze the data?
you. Thank you. So, thank you for that, first of all. But, when I look at an issue, I don't only look at it from just a reactionary standpoint of, oh, here's an issue, let's go spring on it. I always try to gather as much data as I can as possible, whether it be numerical or whether it be talking to people or being able to talk to various stakeholders.
Yeah.
And then from there, I'm able to go and formulate a decision. But most of the time when I'm looking at a decision, the nitty gritty is important to be able to understand the composition of the big stuff. But in order to be able to understand the big swings, that's what we have to really look at, those relationships. That's where things are going to become much more important, where you start analyzing trends, when you start analyzing patterns. That's what's really going to be able to tell you whether you're going right or whether you're going left. That's what's going to make your decision. But, when it comes to data in general, there's such a thing as too much data, where you get overwhelmed by the data and you're
Get
just
in the weeds.
Exactly, your eyes just go over
Yes.
and it's like, why am I looking at this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's definitely I've always done that my entire life.
Yeah, I think also when we're looking at an issue, sometimes we can get overzealous.
Yes.
And so, do you what are your convictions, or what are some things that when you look at an issue that you don't want that to affect your own livelihood?
Well, I think sorry, could you just
Yeah, no worries. I should frame it better. But is there ever an issue that you are analyzing, however, that doesn't align with your own principles?
Well, the thing is that when something I like to think I'm principled.
Yeah.
But also you have to keep in mind of the people you are serving. So when I'm looking at an issue and maybe I may not personally agree with it, or maybe something that I'm not entirely sold on, but there's overwhelming evidence that it's going to be helping people,
Yeah.
you're going to have to go through with it, And that's the thing, is that it ultimately boils down to being able to look at stuff and being able to figure the trade-offs. So for example, am I going to be going and looking at one initiative that's going to be helping 50 people and is going to cost these are fake numbers, but like $10 million? Or is it going to be an initiative that's going to be helping 5,000 people and is going to be costing $10 million? And whether I feel that certain initiatives I don't particularly agree with, the impact is where you're helping the people out of their households. That's where the real tangible change is. That's what we're ultimately trying to do. What I'm ultimately trying to do is increase the word is disposable household income. That is where it's at after you paid your rent, after you paid your
Yeah.
utilities. That's what we're trying to increase. That's what I'm I'm running on.
Understood. No, I really appreciate that very much. Do you mind? You can stick around, right? We're just gonna take this break.
Sure.
Yeah. 3:30 in the afternoon. We'll be back with Mr. Alex Duenas. Once again, he's running for the 39th Guam Legislature, number
10.
Number 10 on the Republican side, and so we'll spend more time with him on the other side of these right here on Wave 105.
My name is Emma. I am 13 years old. 6 years ago, I was injured in a car accident that left me paralyzed from the waist down. Once I completed rehab, my mom applied for a canine companion service dog. Last January, I finally got to meet my service dog, Marcia. We quickly developed a very strong bond. Together, we go to my horseback riding lessons, school band practice, swim meets, and archery classes. Together, we pick vegetables, and we like to cut flowers. I love Marcia. She makes me feel like together we can do anything. I can't imagine life without her. She's a part of the family. We are just one of the thousands of teams Canine Companions has paired together over the past 50 years. With your help, we can continue for another 50. Visit canine.org to see the many ways you can change lives.
can tell that we are gonna be friends.
Open your hearts and clear out your closets. We're exploring the inspiring everyday history behind a movement dedicated to pure generosity. Welcome to the National Day Spotlight for July 15th.
National Give Something Away Day sounds like the kind of event dreamed up by a multi-million-dollar corporation trying to clear out old warehouse inventory. But the celebration didn't come from a boardroom or an act of Congress. Instead, it was launched back in 2015 by a passionate independent giver named Linda Eaton Hall Fulcher. Her holiday challenges everyday citizens to share their daily blessings with someone else. It's a global reminder that true wealth is measured by what we share with our communities rather than what we accumulate inside our homes. It turns out that a nationwide wave of kindness didn't require a massive marketing budget. It just took one person sitting in her living room with a great idea.
I love this day because you know what? We have so much stuff in our house we should give away.
What are we going to start with?
I don't know.
One of the freezers?
No. We're going to start with the other stuff. Food's still important to me. We are also celebrating National Gummy Worm Day and National I Love Horses Day. I'm Alice Anderson.
And I'm Marlo Anderson with National Day Calendar, reminding you to celebrate every day.
If you're looking for world-class website hosting at a fair price, Pair Networks is your best choice. Founded in the early days of the web and still going strong today, Pair Networks now hosts over 150,000 websites for its demanding customers worldwide. Setting the standards for excellence, Pair Networks has a technical and support staff that's second to none. A highly stable company with top-of-the-line technology, Pair Networks offers total reliability and flexibility for your website, and even a money-back guarantee. Whether you're a professional web designer or a beginner just getting your site online, Pair Networks has a web hosting plan that's right for you. Make the move today. Log on and learn more at pair.com. That's PAIR.com. Pair Networks. World-class web hosting at a fair price. Visit us at pair.com. Pair Networks.
The road to Adelup is here, and this time we spoke with Democrat candidates, Senator Tories Terlahi and Senator Sabina Perez. Here is your opportunity to hear how they plan to govern Guam. Watch the conversation on Wave 105's YouTube channel, dated May 28th. This is a Glimpses of Guam radio station.
In the afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is the Bright Side. Right now, it is Beyond the Ballad. Standing by the host, Mr. Pauly Suba.
And once again, we do want to thank Alex Duenas hanging out with us as well as we get to know him even more. If you haven't read any of his op-eds, I highly encourage you to do so. I think all you have to do is Google Alexander Duenas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so how'd you fare during the storm? I'm curious.
You know, it was pretty good
Yeah.
for the most part. I think we got knocked out of power like everybody else.
Sure.
My water pressure is still fairly low,
Okay.
so that's kind of rough. But,
Right.
you know, the thing is that we're healthy. Nobody got hurt. I mean, the house was not damaged at all. So the cats and the dogs are fine.
There you go. Heck
So
yeah,
we're
the
good.
cats and the dogs are family.
They are.
Yeah, I felt more sorry for my dogs than I did my own children.
They're the fur babies.
Yeah, one of my dogs, you could tell he was starting to get like heat rash because
Yeah.
of the heat, right?
Yeah, you know, my dog was always on the floor, you know, just trying to get
Yes.
cool.
On the
He was
tile,
just
finding the cold
too hot.
tile.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was using the Ryobi fan more than we were.
that's very true.
Yeah.
Mine too.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
smart.
So, I mean, let's just talk a little bit about some of the issues that keep showing up on the headlines, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, Simon Sanchez High School, what are your thoughts on procurement, protests, and how can we make that smoother? Because to be honest with you, I don't necessarily blame anybody for the situation. Maybe just the the way the procurement process works.
Right.
But I want to say at least this administration has done their part of trying to move forward. Maybe, you can argue that they're not doing it the correct way, but the legislature is trying to get them the finances to do so. We know we're going to have to go to the bond market and get a lease back. That seems like what we're good at doing is lease backs.
Yeah.
You can argue that we should actually just be putting money aside until we can actually afford to construct
So
these schools.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
So the thing is I think I'm just gonna parse it out into two
Yeah.
issues in particular. So first is the procurement. The procurement is, from what I understand, is separated into systems and then structure. Systems is being able to go through the process, and then the structure of it itself is the procurement process. So the way that I look at remedying the procurement process, and the reason why I'm using I like to use Simon Sanchez as a case, is because Simon Sanchez is just a symptom of the overarching issue, which is the procurement issue. One thing that I've often seen is that whenever a company doesn't like a particular bid result, the first thing that flies up faster than you can blink your eyes is a protest. The way I look at it, though, is that we cannot continue to stand still in time as an island because of protests in particular. Now, I want to qualify this by saying I'm talking about frivolous protests. Now, if your protest has legitimate merit, that should be allowed to have his day in court. But if you're talking about a frivolous protest, Guam should not be standing still in 2024 and when we're in 2026 and still nothing has really been done, whether it be 2020, 2015. You go on about it which way you want, but the reason why I look at my solution to that would be to put in teeth into the procurement appeal process if your case is found to be frivolous. So what do I mean by this? I mean, like, it's in a tiered system. So, for example, first offense, you file a frivolous protest, then you're going to be given a hefty fine. Second tier, if you were found to give a frivolous protest again, then you're going to be given a hefty fine and you won't be allowed to bid on a government of Guam contract for a year. Third time, so on and so forth, because Guam cannot be held back because it's part of some company's corporate strategy at the end of the day. We cannot be continuing to have our major public works projects stalled because of frivolous protests in particular. Like I said again, if you have a legitimate case, bring it forward. It deserves its day in court. But I mean, if it's not, then what are we doing?
Should there be fines?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There should be absolutely fines because there's a penalty. There's a social cost for us being held back.
Right.
Things don't get built. Things don't get done.
And should it be upfront saying if we find that this is frivolous, here's this.
Absolutely.
You will be fined.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing is about deterrence, is like we're trying to deter an action from going forward if we don't like the
Right.
particular result. And I think that the social cost is tremendous for something not moving forward. That is the reason why there needs to be some sort of punitive action or at least consequences for protesting and finding that is frivolous, because things get stalled up. We literally freeze, stand still, don't move.
Right.
And then the other part of your question was, I'm sorry.
I might have even forgotten too, to be honest. Well, we'll move on to the drug interdiction, and should we be inspecting the containers at 100%?
The thing is that I would like to in a perfect world. However, we're limited by, from what I understand, manpower as well as the ability just to have so many officers being able to go through. I think, and this is the concept of absolute assurance versus reasonable assurance.
Right.
If it's reasonable assurance, that's something that people say, hey, we're comfortable with it, we can trust it, we say we're getting most of it. 100%, which is absolute assurance, it's incredibly difficult to achieve because 100% is just very difficult to achieve.
Sure.
So, when it comes to that kind of stuff, in a perfect world, I would, but that goes back to the resources generation.
Sure.
And that's the reason why it goes to what I'm running on, which is the economy, to grow revenue as opposed to, saying, well, we have this much within this budget for this year. How are we going to be able to split that up? We're going to be doing that for a few more years. But then as we go down the line and we start building things up, you're going to start seeing it breathe easier. You're going to start seeing expansion because the revenue base is just growing in general.
Sure. Yeah. And what are your thoughts on more technical curriculum in the school, like going back to like trades and whatnot within the school system
Oh, I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
that's something we should definitely do. I mean, it's kind of a joke within my generation that, I went to college, but I could have just gone into the trades and I could have been making so much more if I were just to go and forego that. I think trades provide such a valuable skill. It not only gives you life skills, but it gives you an actual skill that you can work on your house, or whether you can go and rent it out or your services out to be able to go and make some extra money. You can have, for a lot of people who they don't see themselves going through higher education, they need to go and get a trade, because I always say you don't need to go to college to be successful. You absolutely do not, but you do need skills. You need skills. Otherwise, you're just going to be like everybody else. I think that having that Trades Academy is absolutely beautiful. I think what GCC used to do before was great. And I think that that's something that definitely needs to be brought back. Vocational education needs to be brought back.
You know, I was just having a conversation with some of my cousins because they flew from off island over for a reunion. And just last night, they were reminding me of my first cousin, John, who lives in Kono, Hawaii. And he went to GCC when it was a high school. He learned the electrical field.
Nice.
He immediately, right out of high school, went to work for Xerox.
Wow.
And so he was one of their very few Xerox maintenance workers. He worked on the Xerox machines, right? Kono had a shortage. They were seeking out other engineers throughout their company, and he took that job and is still there today.
There you go.
And the training happened while he was in high school.
And that's the thing. It's a beautiful idea because it works. It works. And no better time to go and get them when they're in high school, when they're the most eager to learn something. They're raring to go. They want to be able to go out there and get a job fresh out of high school, because I know that out of high school, all of my friends, what was the first thing we were going to go and do? Work in food and beverage. I worked as a waiter. I worked as a bartender. You know, I go out there and earn some money and just have some money to go and buy some fast food, or to go and hopefully pay for gas for my car. And those are the times where you're really able to go and walk out with a certificate, with something tangible that's completely free, in the sense that the kids don't have to pay anything for it, or virtually very little for it. And they can go out with real skills that are universally accepted within America. You know, when you're looking at electrical panels or things of that nature, that's pretty, at least within America, same stuff, right?
Yeah. Do you see that the charter schools could be a pathway?
I think the charter schools are a conduit. They can be definitely used as one conduit. I think that charter schools are definitely a different form of education that people have been actually very interested in. They're very interested in it. I think they definitely do have their place, and I think they're going away anytime soon. They're only going to start growing. I would think so, even in the mainland. And I think that when it comes to charter schools in particular, it's something that gives people choices. And I don't think one is better than the other. I genuinely don't believe that. But it does give people an alternative, whatever they're looking for.
Sure. And should we continue to balance the finances, the budget, because they're pulling from the general fund?
They are.
Charter schools and GDOE. They're
are.
all public schools in this sense, because we are subsidizing both GDOE and the charter schools.
Yes.
Right? And so do you like the current status? Should we increase charter schools? Should we decrease GDOE? What are your thoughts?
I think that in general, I think that it really depends on what the people are actually looking for. If there's an increased demand for charter schools and the capacity is not, exceeding it, then we should probably look at adding a few more. Now, the thing is, I think it has to be very differentiated, that one is not better than the other. They're just different. They're just different. And that's why, even though they're competing for the same pot of resources, it's something that should just be presented as a choice to people, that they have the ability to choose one or the other, and, just what you want to do.
Sure. If the population within GDOE continues to decrease, how do we address that, including facilities?
So the thing is with DOE, from what I'm able to understand, most of its budget, 80% of it or something like that, is tied up in payroll. Payroll is something that comes every 2 weeks. It keeps on punching. It's unrelenting, because people need to get paid, right?
Yeah.
And then you have this other bucket of this 20%, which is just, regular maintenance, deferred maintenance, regular maintenance, things of that nature. But if things are going to continue to decline, the data would otherwise support that, we've got to start streamlining things more. And I'm not talking about cuts. I've never been a big fan of cuts, but I do believe in attrition. I believe that when people leave, don't fill the position. When people are gone, it is what it is. Because we have had the DOE population shrink by some 10,000 students over the past. Back when I was in GW, we were literally sitting on top of each other. It was a school of 2,800 kids. There was absolutely nowhere to sit. Now it looks like a ghost town, and they're not alone in that. A lot of other schools are pretty much, there's an exodus. Sure. There's clearly fewer. So when we have these types of buildings that are going to be made available, or we start streamlining things, that's what we have to do, because the community needs to make a decision on this. And it's basically, do we value having all these schools where they are, and then we're always going to be looking for the funding source? Or are we going to be able to streamline things, and then we're going to be able to allocate those more to kids, or to, textbook resources or other virtual resources? That's what we're going to have to make that decision. And I don't usually like to punt on this, but I do believe that something as deeply rooted as schools truly is a community decision. We need to decide as a community which is more important to us.
Yeah, because I can see both sides. I understand that it is expensive to keep facilities open throughout the island if the population continues to decrease.
Right.
However, I see the value in a school in each village, where families are walking their children to school, being able to go to parent-teacher conferences on a regular basis. Because what do we find is the obstacle? Transportation. A lot of times. Why is the parent not as active in the school? Well, they're at work. And it takes 40 minutes. I mean, I know everything's close by, but still. The reality is, after work, the last thing that you want to do is take another hour and a half at a parent-teacher conference or an association. You want to go home, you got to feed your children.
And you got to go, and that's you hit it right on, is that you have to, there's a lot of other things. And it's not that parents don't want to be vested in their kids. It's just that they have so many competing demands of being an adult that, you have not only your kid or this kid, but you also have your other kids that you got to take care of. And that's why it's such a communal decision to keep them within the villages in general, because, especially at the elementary school level, because elementary schools, they work better with just smaller groups because you have little kids, so that's why it's so important that the community decide what do we want. And you know what? No decision is bad in this case. And this is one of the exceptions that I would say something like this, is because it's so deeply ingrained that, it's part of the community, that this truly has to be one of those things that whether we go left or whether we go right, we accept that decision fully for everything that it comes with, the good and the bad.
I appreciate that. I think I would be okay with going further away to save money financially for the whole island.
Sure.
If we had a stable public transportation.
Yes.
And we just don't.
Yeah, so that's the thing with public transportation, is that you can see the benefits. There's definitely very tangible benefits that come with public transportation, because if you think about every advanced economy in the world, what are one of their main staples? Reliable, efficient, safe public transportation. And the logic behind this is actually kind of like more big picture, is that, if you have public transportation that's reliable, clean, friendly, all that good stuff, people won't have to have maybe like one less vehicle. One less vehicle means one less payment per month, less insurance payments, less on gas. I suspect you're probably saving between $8,000 to $10,000 a year per car. So I think that that's something very important, that public transportation is something that we need. Our island is not that big. I think that we can definitely get this going. I think that this is something that's going to make things that are a lot easier for a lot of households. And Guam is one of those places where you kind of need a car or a truck, but I don't think that if public transportation was actually strong and reliable, then it would be, something that can definitely alleviate the household. And, I got to say, this is not an issue that has just happened 2 years ago or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15. This is something we've been needing to address for a very long time, decades. So that's why I think that this is something that we got to make a concerted effort. It will make a difference on the household front. I know it will.
I appreciate that response as well, too. And I can also walk back that we actually do have a stable public transportation. It's called school buses, right? And I think that's kind of where we as a community has said, no, you shall provide this. So much so, you shall provide this to private school students, right?
Yes.
And so if a community can continue to put that kind of pressure
Yes.
on our leaders, maybe you yourself, then we can accomplish even more.
I think we can. And the thing is that when it comes to developing an economy and going back to that increasing of that household income that I'm talking about, these are just one of the levers that are used to be able to free up that money on the household level. But if you free it up on the household level, that's not only going to help the households, that's going to be able to help the business community as well, because you'll have more discretionary income to spend. Households will be able to go and save up for that vacation to go and visit their family and friends in the States. They'd be able to go and pay for their kids, extracurricular activities without having to go and sacrifice the power bill. These are just one of the mechanisms that we use. It's never just one thing. It's a multi-pronged approach in order to be able to get all of these things moving at the same time. And that's why, like with public transportation or creating new industries, these go to the concepts of reducing the cost of living as well as increasing revenue-making opportunities. And that's what's ultimately going to make things flourish, because anything great, and I said this, I think, probably earlier in the show, it doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
These things are meticulously planned, and it's thought over 1,000 times, but when it works, it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
And I guess we can round it back towards the biggest industry in Guam still is the tourism industry, right?
Yes.
And so I've read a number of your op-eds, maybe even a year ago, on, in what direction should we go, right?
Yes.
And so have you thought about that lately, on whether we should start focusing more on the not necessary luxury tourism, or have you found through your data, have you found that we should actually pursue more luxury tourism?
So from what I'm able to research and from what I'm able to see, there seems to be this polarization between the luxury markets as well as our general market, or the budget traveler is what I call it. I'm a budget traveler. I travel on budget. I think most of my friends do, because, it gets the job done and it's great. But
do you use their visitors bureau when you plan out your traveling?
I do not. I'm more of the Instagram type of go and figure it out.
And I'm not going to sway you one way or another, but that's what I'm finding more and more people are realizing what is the Visitors Bureau's role.
So, the thing is I think it creates a much more emphasis and focused marketing effort. Yeah. And I think that it is important, because when we're trying to go and make money and we're trying to generate revenue, the last thing we should be doing is cutting off our marketing arm, because that's where the money is at. That's what's going to be the one to generate the money. But it's about being focused about what we're looking for. First of all, I've advocated, let's go decide what kind of market we're going to actually be catering to. Are we catering to the luxury market? Are we catering to the budget market? And budget is not a bad word. I want to really clarify that. But there's different needs and different wants of what they're looking for. So back in the 1980s and the 1990s, Guam was really in a perfect spot, because we had this quaint, island environment, but we were catering to a larger luxury market than what we're seeing right now. There were people who were coming out here and they were spending money and they were really dropping a lot of cash, and things were doing well. But right now, the world has gotten so competitive and things have changed so much, especially post-COVID. We need to be much more focused, because we're competing against the entire planet. What makes Guam special? We say our culture is special, but every culture is special. That's what makes us unique. Every culture is unique. That's what it is. But if we're really going to be making this effort and we're really going to be trying to get what we're looking for, I think first we need to say, this is what we're looking for, and we're going to go and get them. Because if you market to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. So that's why we need to be very focused about what we're looking for and use the correct channels to be able to lasso those people in, and that would translate into sales. It will.
Yeah. I think also, because you even brought it up, right? Like you don't go to the Japan Visitors Bureau or the Korean Visitors Bureau to see how they can assist you before you travel, right?
Nope.
And so we do have to look at the way we how do visitors see us?
Right.
Right. And so a lot of the focus, I mean, even Senator Chris Barnett said it the other day. And like, I could tell you right now, we need to do a better job of maintaining our offerings, which
Right.
include parks, which include restrooms. And we can argue that we're not doing a good job at that.
Right. Right. So, that's the thing is that if we're going to be going forward with this, we got to be able to not only clean up or take care of it externally, but we got to clean up the house inside too. And that kind of goes to one of the things that I'd like to advocate for is that being able to get our people involved in cleaning up this stuff. One mechanism that I think that could work is the service learning law. Right now, the service learning law is for service learning, but I think we should just modify it to service learning and or community service. This would get kids vested in the community in the sense that they can get their credits through cleaning up parks. They can do it through cleaning up beaches. It gets them that vested interest in not only maintaining the island, but it serves a dual function in helping to be able to clean things up. So that's why I think that that's just, like I said, one lever. There's many levers that need to be moved in order to make everything run the way that we would like to see it run.
Sure, yeah.
So that's why I think that cleaning it up is going to be something. If we're marketing ourselves as an island paradise, we need to look like one in the sense that we need to have things clean. We need to have our park bathrooms open. We need to be able to have things working, and we need to be able to have things going,
Yeah.
very pristine, if you would.
Right. We have a caller. Do you mind taking a call?
Sure.
Jason, you're on the air.
Hey, Mr. Alice, I had a question for you. I like some of these ideas that I'm hearing, but I just wanted to ask you, should you be elected into office, what's your plan? What's your goals for the office, and how you're going to achieve that goal? And, more specifically, what's the first thing you aim to do?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, for you.
Thank you, Jason. The thing is that my main platform is economic development and improvement, as well as stronger fiscal government management. But the very first thing I wanted to do was what I just talked about previously. That's the first thing I want to do, because I believe that type of modification to the language it's not only impactful in terms of being able to keep the island clean, but I think it helps instill the values of being able to get people vested in a community. If people are not vested in a community, there's nothing to defend. And I mean this in terms of any investment, whether it be your house or whether it be whatever, car you purchase. If there's no investment, then it's easy to let things go by the wayside. It could be like that for a job. If you're not invested in your job, it's easy for it to go by the wayside. So that's the first thing that I would like to do. Now, bigger picture, I think that's really, first of all, when it comes to the budget, really drilling down on it and really being able to look at it with precision, deep precision. That's my background in general, and that's what I think I can really offer. And when it comes to the economy, the one thing I really want to be able to do is really stretch my fingers wide and be able to go and get those channels going to be able to get that investment into Guam, specifically for the call center industry that I would like to see come to fruition.
Thanks, Jason. He's good? Yeah? Okay. Well, I know we're at the end, too, so, take your time. If there's anything that we might have missed that I didn't ask you that you definitely wanted to share with our audience, you can use that time now.
Pauly, it's been a great show.
Yeah.
It really has been. I think we talked about a lot of different issues.
And I appreciate that. I took a chance because I'm like, I think Alex understands this. Let me just ask him. And so thanks for just being very open to this conversation.
No, thank you for asking these questions, because I think these are the type of questions that need to be asked, because this is what's going to be setting us up for the next 10 years. These are the questions that are the big ones that are really the concerns of not only the people, but what's ultimately going to be charting our course for the future. So these types of conversations are good. They're very good, because it allows people to go and look at the candidates and say, hey, you know what? I like this person, I like this person, I like this person. And it gives people a really good opportunity to get to know us at a more personal level too,
right,
and our thought processes.
Right.
And that's, like I always say, more choices are always great for the consumer.
There you go. There you go. And again, where can people find you? What are you on? All the platforms? Instagram, Facebook, TikTok?
I am on, not TikTok,
okay,
but I am definitely on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
If you like what I say and you agree with you think that I can help make Guam a better place, I would like to ask for your very precious vote.
Understood. Again, number 10, right?
Number 10 on the
Number 10
Republican
on the
side of the
Republican
ballot.
side. All right, we covered everything, right? We're good?
I think we're good.
All right. Alex Duenas, once again, hanging out with us for Beyond the Ballot right here on Wave 105. We'll take the break. On the other side, I'm actually going to leave as well because Senor Ron Laguana is coming up for Oden Fino tomorrow. Once again, that's presented by the University of Guam Tomorrow Studies program. Thanks for hanging out with us. I will be back on tomorrow. Everybody get home safe. Be kind to each other, especially out on those roads. Adios.